Welcome to another episode of Doctor's Eyes Only podcast. I'm your host today, Brad Quick, the president and one of the partners of Vestia Personal Wealth Advisors. Joining me today is one of my very best friends in my 15 years of orthopedics, Mike Lee. Mike is a whole lot of things. He is a past president of the ACFAS, which is the American College of Foot and Ankle Surgery. Mike is a key opinion leader and has done a lot of consulting. But the main reason why I've got Mike on today, in addition to I just haven't caught up with him for a while, is to share kind of how his entrepreneurial spirit brought something from ideas and kind of seeing needs in the industry to actual implants going in patients. So welcome, Mike.
Thanks, Brad. Great to see you. Great to be here.
Great to see you as well, my friend.
Yeah.
So anything else, anything I missed as far as your background you want to share or anything you want to add in there?
Yeah, well, I mean, those are all great things. You forgot I'm hopefully a good friend, a loving husband, a father of four.
Yeah.
Man of faith.
Yes.
A lot of other things in there too. So yes. I try, I guess, 10 or 15 years ago, all those things were the things that defined me.
Yeah.
But other things do now, I guess.
Yes.
But I've had a good run, 27 years in foot and ankle surgery, and did my time through ACFAS, 8 or 11 years on the board. Was president of ACFAS. Still involved a little bit there, but kind of the doing a lot of education and surgical skills courses and things like that along the way. It becomes a bit of a grind after a while, and you need a new passion. And over the last 10 to 12 or so years, product development and the side hustle, as I call it, which is becoming more of a full-time gig for me. But that's really kind of what stokes me, I guess, professionally at this point.
I love that, Mike. Certainly where you and I have connected the most, but your faith, Mike, and you as a family man are the things that I think of where you and I have connected the most. And so I love that about you. I love your heart and kind of that side of you. And you're right. Your side hustle is now kind of the front hustle, I think, more than anything. So
yeah.
So I want to get into that in a little bit, but let's start with one. I don't know that we've ever had this conversation. How did you decide to get into foot and ankle surgery? Like, tell me about that path.
Yeah, I get asked that a lot, and I don't know if it's just was so long ago that I don't really remember, or it was just kind of worked out that way, divine intervention. But I was at the University of Northern Iowa and trying to figure out what I was doing. I had I liked science and spent a lot of time at the old McCollum Science Hall in Cedar Falls, Iowa. And a good friend of mine who I'd met, actually played high school football against him. We became friends on campus, and we were in a lot of the same classes. He was kind of set on going to podiatry school, and I figured, hey, he got me through biochemistry. He might as well get me through podiatry school, and so I applied to what's now Des Moines University, and the rest is kind of history. That that person, Marty Cheney, he's still in practice, and we've remained good friends. Obviously, lose touch a bit just with time and things like that. But he was probably the guy that kind of talked me into it to some degree. We kind of joked that Marty got me through biochemistry at Northern Iowa, and then I don't know that I got him through podiatry school, but I finally found my passion and was able to at least return the favor here and there with some notes and things like that along the way. So
that's awesome.
I guess that's kind of how I ended up there. But it was, I look back on it and I don't really know that I was necessarily driven. It just kind of, again, through relationships. I mean, it seems like everything in life happens because of relationships.
Amen.
And that was a friendship that led me this way.
Right. That's awesome. I guess it would be a big miss if we didn't talk a little bit about Western Penn. I mean, there's definitely some formative stuff that happened there, and that's an amazing program for those that don't know that. Tell me a little bit about that, your time there, and kind of the friendships there and other things.
Yeah, I mean, that's really what kind of launched my career in a completely different trajectory. And, at the time when I was a student, it was the Podiatry Hospital of Pittsburgh. And it was, this goes back into the 1990s, not to date myself, but it was one of 3 or 4, programs in the country. It was a 3-year residency program. And at the time, there were a lot of 1- and 2-year residency programs in podiatry. And Alan Catanzariti and Bob Mendocino, 2 good friends and mentors. I mean, I owe those to the world. They ran that program, and I remember even being probably a second-year podiatry student going into the library, and they used to have a newsletter that somehow the Des Moines University Library got, and I grew up a Steelers fan, so Pittsburgh kind of always caught my ear, and I realized it was one of the better programs, and I just started working towards it, and was fortunate enough to get there at the right time. I was in Pittsburgh for exactly 7 days before the interviews.
Huh.
There's a long story. I'm sure I've shared it with you probably 3 times over a bourbon, where Jordan Grossman, my brother from another mother, walked in as I was a student. He had been told by one of his classmates at actually Gerard Hughes program to, be sure to give me some good questions. And Jordan walked in and spent about 30 minutes asking me about ankle fractures. I answered every question, even the one that he had in his back pocket to stump me. And he grabbed the x-rays, walked out of the residence room and said, "Good job." And that was even before the program, before the interview.
Yep.
And that was it. I knew I was going to probably land that program, and that kind of set everything in motion. So it was a great program, a great experience. We worked like dogs back then. Spent a lot of time on vascular surgery and plastic surgery, in addition to a ton of foot and ankle surgery, really good foot and ankle surgery. So that program really kind of set the wheels in motion, for, what's been a really good run for 27 years in the profession.
Yeah, that's great. So Mike, you were there, and then did you start in Des Moines right after that into practice? Is that where you started?
Actually, I got a job town just about an hour outside of Des Moines, Marshalltown, Iowa. Mm-hmm. And there's a multi-specialty group there, and they were expanding. They wanted to bring in a podiatrist, foot and ankle surgeon. And I actually got my job before I even entered my final year of residency. I had that job. They were building a new clinic, new office building, and so I was really, really fortunate to land there. And I spent about 3 or 4 years, maybe 5 years, in practicing in Marshalltown and Ames. Ames, Iowa, is the home of Iowa State, and so I was spending time in both communities. And I just felt the need to get into the Des Moines market, and was fortunate enough to join an orthopedic group. They made me a partner literally after 1 year.
Wow.
That was back in the day when most podiatrists weren't allowed to be partners in orthopedic groups. And so, I was really fortunate that all kind of stacked up that way for me.
Yeah. It's interesting because now it's kind of the standard of care as far as all the, almost every orthopedic practice has some podiatric surgeon representation. So maybe they were a little ahead of the game there for sure.
Well, that group was ahead of the game, and the senior partner who's now passed, he was a DO, and he kind of had this mindset that he had been had some degree discrimination as well against him, especially in orthopedics back in the day.
Right.
And his mindset was come in, do good work, and if you do good work and take good care of people, that's all we really care about. And as much as I may have disagreed with some of the other things that senior partner may have done, in his personal life and things of that nature, I always respected him for that, and he gave me a great opportunity, and the rest is history.
Yeah, yeah. Well, switching, Mike, a little bit to kind of some of the business side, how did you get started consulting? Like, how did that transition happen? How far into your practice were you?
I was pretty young. I was fortunate. The year I left the residency program and started in practice, Bob Mendocino was president of American College of Foot and Ankle Surgeons. And he put me on a committee. And, the way that works is you're on a committee, you do good work. And if you're willing to do the work, at least at the time, finding people that were even willing to do the work was a challenge. And so if you did good work and you did it, they would move you along. And there were a couple of things that happened. And within a year and a half, I found myself chairing a committee.
Yeah.
And, that kind of set the wheels in motion for a bigger role within ACFAS. And of course, that kind of increases your sphere of influence. And so I was probably out 3 to 5 years, and I was starting to do some consulting work. There's a lot to learn there.
Sure.
I look back on some of the things that I may have done or said and realize that probably wasn't the right thing to do at that time. But
right.
I was pretty young when I started that. I think that you've got to get a little bit under your belt and get some life experiences to really do a good job at that. But so I've been doing it for a long time. If you do the math, it's probably 22 years in some form or fashion. I've been in the industry, so to speak.
Yep. Well, somewhere between there and kind of the Fab Five moniker, that was if you remember, we kind of came up with that designation. Quick story aside, Mike, and I think you and Jordan approached me as the general manager of the Zimmer Biomet Foot and Ankle business and said, if you guys invest in us, as far as we really know and understand this game of training other surgeons, let us, kind of partner with us, and we'll really help you educate a lot of surgeons, which clearly, naturally will turn into a lot of business. And so I think we had to wait a year to get the funds, but I think finally got that together and really was starting to make an impact together. So that was a lot of fun, and saw you guys in action. You guys were really good at that.
Yeah, well, thanks, Brad. I mean, it still amazes me, and just kind of very generically, it amazes me the decisions that are made. I probably won't win any fans in industry with this, but how decisions about surgeon education are made, and even industry, and I'm sure we'll talk about it, product development, we'll talk about it, but decisions are made from within I don't want to call it an ivory tower, but from within a cubicle in some office building, who knows where, about how to educate surgeons. And all industry has to do is get the surgeons involved. And we know how our peers want to be educated. We've been doing it for 25 years, 26 years. And you actually took that and did it. And I remember, you had some, I would say, and, from at least from my perspective, they seemed to be largely successful meetings. There were
absolutely
butts in the seats, people engaged, good discussions, thoughtful, educating decisions and discussions being had, and not just, show and tell, trying to sell product type of meetings.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, again, any of our friends listening from the large ortho companies, I think some of them really get this right. But to me, it was not magic. It was not rocket science. I think we did affectionately call you guys the Fab Five, but 5 kind of best in class former presidents of the society, and people really good at education. And, 1, the names, people knew who you were. And 2, you guys were really great at education. And so, believe it or not, then people start showing up to the courses, which is ultimately what you want. Yeah. So no, that was a lot of fun. You did allude to it earlier. Let's go ahead and switch into the development side. So somewhere between there and, starting SDI, I want to get into that. Like you saw a need, there's some products on the market, some implants that weren't optimal. So how did you make the leap from doing some education and that kind of thing to deciding you want to start your own gig and making implants and getting through FDA and selling them?
Yeah, there's really 2 people that probably prompted that. One I will not name, but he was involved in and worked for a large orthopedic company. An engineer who kind of, told, I think, the Fab Five at a meeting that you guys don't really know what you need.
Wow.
And I remember probably later that night, having a bourbon with Grossman and a couple other guys, and thinking, why are engineers telling us what we need to do,
right,
or what we need to do better foot and ankle surgery?
Yeah.
And it kind of dawned on me that, for years it was, especially in foot and ankle surgery, we've taken other orthopedic implants and, turned them upside down or inside out, a humeral locking plate, and used it for an ankle fusion, things of that nature. And, if you go back 15 years ago, there just wasn't really any, maybe it's 18 or 20 years now, I don't know, but it's, there just wasn't a lot of product specific implants for foot and ankle surgery. And about that time, Shannon Rush, who I will name, one of my partners in SDI, had an idea for an Achilles repair system.
Right.
And it was a percutaneous Achilles repair system. And he kind of thought about this one night in a hot tub, actually. He came up with the idea.
We don't need to know the whole story, Mike.
That's you can do a separate podcast with Shannon. I'll tune into that one for sure.
Yes. That might get a lot of views.
Yeah. And so he had this idea that he wanted to develop, and he came to Jordan and I at ACFAS and said, hey, I got this idea. I've been working on it. I'm not really sure what to do with it. You guys interested in helping me? And of course, Jordan and I jumped on it, said, yeah, let's go do this thing. And that was kind of, what prompted this whole process. And it's evolved a lot over the years, but, Shannon was the one that really kind of jump-started that because he had a great idea.
Yeah. Yeah. How did you so there's a financial aspect to this, right? I mean, getting from, we've got this great idea, which is clearly a great idea, to, no, we're going to literally find investors and or pony up the money ourselves and take this financial risk. How did you make that leap? And, kind of who are the guys that went along with that along the way, your SDI partners?
Yeah. I think a lot of it is as we kind of developed this and kind of started working, that whole Achilles system turned into, we had to take on investors. And, we learned a lot as we went through this. We spent a lot of money, and it really didn't kind of turn out the way that maybe we had hoped it would.
Right.
But through that, I think that we realized that we, number one, had a passion for it. Number two, we got a little bit of street cred, if you will. And ultimately what happened was we ended up working with a I wouldn't say a startup. It was a growing orthopedic company.
Right.
And doing a lot of consulting work for them.
Yeah.
And that really helped us kind of, it was seed money, if you will. Yeah. We did a bunch of consulting work. There was some royalties involved, and all that kind of was reinvested back into SDI.
Yeah.
And that was really what kind of prompted that.
Got it.
We had a good mentor there. A dear friend of yours. I'll drop his name. I've already dropped a few, so why not drop more? But Rod Meyer.
Yeah.
With Nextremity. And Rod really gave us a great opportunity to do some consulting work for them and earn some royalties. And we're still earning some royalties. And so that really helped SDI kind of grow into what it is today, whatever it is today.
Sure. Yeah. How many products has SDI developed so far? And then how many exits have you had, Mike?
All told, we've got. I should have known this before. I think
that's right. Yeah, order of magnitude.
I'll say 4 exits, and we've got 3 more that are basically on the door.
Yeah.
For FDA. Yeah. And then we've got a whole slew of things that that we're really kind of looking at, and we would like to continue to push along through the process. So
Sure.
we've got probably 12 or 15 products that are already in the space that we're generating royalties from as well.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And I don't know if you know this, Mike, I'll share it. So you were kind of you guys were kind of the inspiration for me going after and getting my exit advisor certification, and then also doing some of this consulting work. I mean, just it was fun being able to collaborate with you on some of the, how do the people on the other side of the table think? And because I had sat on that side of the table, I was able to add a little perspective there and hopefully help a little bit along the way there. So.
Well, and we appreciate that. You know this, but I'll say it in this public forum that you've served as a great role model and mentor and advisor.
Tell me a little bit about, you mentioned some earlier, but maybe some of the things for others considering going this route. What are you kind of one or two learnings, from a upside standpoint, and then what are some of the scars you've encountered, and maybe hopefully others that are going down this path can avoid?
Yeah, the list of scars are probably too many to mention. I mean, we've probably in some ways spent or burned or lost more money than we've made. You've got to have good people around you, and especially for surgeons, and I really feel like I run SDI kind of on a day-to-day basis, but it's certainly not a one-man show, and I've got 5 partners. I mentioned Jordan and Shannon, but I'd be remiss if I didn't say who the others were: Mark Hardy, Graham Hamilton, and Troy Buffelli.
Yep.
And that group evolved a little bit, probably pre-COVID. One time we had an engineer with an MBA involved with us.
Yep.
He had to leave. He was in the VC world and had to step aside. And that was really when I kind of stepped in and started running this. But, as a group of surgeons, probably the biggest advice I would have if you're a surgeon or surgeons is you've got to surround yourself with the right people.
Right.
And you need a good IP attorney, somebody that's willing to let you do some of the legwork, because it's very, very expensive if they're going to do it all.
Right.
You need somebody that can help you with all the quality and regulatory piece. You need a good engineer. And if you don't have a good engineer, you can throw a lot of money out the window. And so,
for sure,
I think that's probably the best advice I have is surround yourself with good people. And you can try to do it as inexpensively as you possibly can, but you can't do it on a dime.
Right.
It's an expensive proposition. It's not a short-term play. And we still have discussions internally at SDI about this. We were very fortunate, and we had a couple of exits, one in particular that the timing was just right.
Yeah.
And we had several companies bidding on something, and we had an exit that was really, really, really fruitful for us.
Yep.
But you can't do those all the time. We like to use the baseball analogies. You're not going to hit grand slam home runs with every product that you develop. And, a string of base hits still eventually gets one across the plate, right? So it's okay to hit singles and doubles, and particularly right now, I think the market's a little bit challenging.
Right.
We've got an economy that's not exactly not a lot of M&A going on. Post-COVID, it was, or during COVID, it was very tough. Post-COVID, I think it's still a bit of a struggle. And so, it's a long-term play. You got to be committed to it. You got to stick with it. And, SDI, we've got a pretty significant burn rate at this point.
Yeah.
If we combine all of our products and all that we're doing, we're burning about 6 figures, actually over 6 figures a month.
Right.
To keep this thing going. So it's not a business venture for the weak at heart. You have to have that entrepreneurial spirit.
Yep.
You have to believe in what you're doing, and you gotta stick with it, or it's just not going to happen.
Yeah, for sure, Mike. I think what I've seen is there's, every orthopedic surgeon I've ever met has great ideas. I mean, they do a lot of the same procedures every day. Some of them, then there's the funnel gets smaller as you talk about folks that actually turn that into IP and patents, and then even smaller, the ones that get those developed, and the ones that take that all the way across the finish line and create their own company to do it is a very small fractional. So yeah, you guys certainly are not faint of heart, and have taken that leap, and again, it's been moderately fruitful at least, right, for you guys. So
yeah, I think it's probably it depends how you're measuring your outcomes, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we've done well enough that we're providing for our families or for our retirement, but probably more importantly, we're having some fun.
Yes.
And we're building some relationships, and it kind of stokes those flames and within yourself and your profession and what you've got going on. So it's a good thing.
Yeah. Well, and I truly believe the work you guys are doing and making patient outcomes better. So I think that's, ultimately what we're looking for as well. So Mike, this has been fantastic. Before we wrap up, I always like to ask this question. So, one of our values at Vestia is wealth that matters. So I want to ask, what is wealth that matters for Mike Lee?
Yeah. It's a good question. I would have probably given you a completely different answer 6 or 10 years ago. I mean, listen, we all want to provide, we all want to, ideally leave something for our kids and loved ones, and, and that's wealth. But, for me, it's probably more than anything, relationships.
Yeah.
And, friendships. Knowing that I was a good father, a good husband, provided for my family, my friends, the people that really know me, know that they can trust me.
Yeah.
I'm honest. I think, you start to obviously, and, not to, get too deep here, but as you get a little later in the years, you start to value different things.
Right.
And so, I value relationships and you just want to leave that mark that you did the right thing by people. And I've changed a lot in that regard. And it's not all about money. Unfortunately, we live in a society where you can't go to the grocery store and nobody's handing me a dozen eggs and a loaf of bread based on my good looks.
Right.
If they did, I'd be much skinnier. You just, it's the other things in life that really matter.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to focus more on those things. And, my wife's been instrumental in that. She's opened my eyes to a lot of those things. So,
yeah. I literally, Mike, got chills. I consider myself blessed to be a friend of yours, my friend. I really do. So
likewise.
So it's been fantastic.
You and your wife.
Yeah. Amen.
You're a good man, Brad.
Thank you, my friend. Well, this has been a great episode, Mike. Thanks for joining us, taking time out of your calendar, both at SDI and operating. If you'd like to stay in the loop and make sure you continue to hear great episodes like this one, make sure you like and subscribe. If you'd love to connect with one of our expert advisors on the wealth management side, make sure you connect us, reach out directly at myteam@vestia.com. That's myteam@vestia.com. If you're interested in hearing more about how we can help you at Vestia Consulting do some of the work, take some of this IP yourself and figure out how to get it into the hands of surgeons and into patients, reach out to me directly at bequick@vestia.com, bequick@vestia.com. Thanks very much and stay safe.
The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Vestia Advisors, LLC. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. It should not be construed as legal or tax advice and is not intended to replace the advice of a qualified attorney or tax advisor. This information is not an offer or a solicitation to buy or sell securities. Investing involves risk, including risk of loss. Before investing, you should consider the investment objectives, risks, charges, and expenses associated with investment products. Investment decisions should be based on an individual's own goals, time horizon, and tolerance for risk. Past performance is no guarantee of future results. Diversification and asset allocation do not ensure a profit or guarantee against loss. Consult your financial professional before making any investments. Investment advisory services offered through Vestia Personal Wealth Advisors, Vestia Retirement Plan Consultants, and Vestia Advisors LLC. Securities offered through Osdale Financial Partners, Inc., 5187 Utica Ridge Road, Davenport, Iowa, 52807. Member, FINRA, SIPC. Vestia Personal Wealth Advisors, Vestia Retirement Plan Consultants, Vestia Advisors LLC, and Osdale Financial Partners, Inc. are independently owned and operated.